Hi, I'm Natalie,
Hi, I'm Catherine.
and welcome to Art Buds.
Art Buds is a podcast about being an artist in Ontario.
And welcome to episode 2, where we introduce ourselves and our practice.
We're both two emerging artists trying to make it work in Ontario.
And we're at different stages of our art careers. And this is our conversation.
Welcome.
So when we were first talking about doing this, we were thinking about what were the different segments we wanted to include. And I think we decided that we were going to start just talking about like who we are, what are our art practices, how we got to what we're doing. So do you want to start?
Oh boy. Sure. So my name is Catherine. And I've been a baby artist since 2022. But I've always been in the creative realm. I went to school for art, but I went to school for teaching art, which is very different. So Brock University, I did concurrent education. So you're never really learning your own art practice. You're kind of learning how to teach art.
Was your undergrad a BFA plus a BEd?
Yes, yeah. So it was a dual credit, or I guess a dual degree. And so when I left university, I didn't understand the art world whatsoever. I actually looked at my fourth year notes right before I went only to teachers college, and the only note that I had after, or like in that period, was just grant writing. There was no conversation about what happens after school, no conversation about what to do or how to get shows or how to be a practicing artist. Absolutely zero. So in 2022, when I kind of really came to the fact that teaching wasn't my passion and wasn't something that like I really wanted to do the rest of my life, I had to start from scratch. So it's been quite the journey ever since.
What did that look like starting from scratch? Like how did you begin?
Funny enough, I began with the Guelph Arts Council. So, one of my friends was like, "Let's go to Art on the Street, downtown Guelph." This was like kind of right after COVID really hit. So everything was finally starting to open up. We went to Art on the Street. Guelph Arts Council was there. I talked to Freedom, and they're like, "Oh, join our newsletter. Like, take a look at our like this is what we do." And I saw their GAMP program. I was like, I'm gonna take a whack at it. I'll apply. Didn't think I'd get in. At this point, I was kind of making artwork. Like I had to go on a bit of a mental health leave for just like a series of events that like I just needed the world to stop. And I was going back to artwork. Like I was making things, but I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of intuitively started going back to a few artworks from university, and I had put a piece into a show. Again, not expecting anything, so it was kind of one of those like throw it out there to the universe, see what happens. And funny enough, I had gotten to GAMP, and
That's the Guelph Emerging Artist Mentorship Program.
yep, sorry, thank you. Yeah, I had gotten to the Guelph Emerging Artist Mentorship Program, and then I had gotten into this juried show for the Color and Form Society in Etobicoke. And that was kind of the launching point. I was like, okay, some moderate success. Let's see what else I can do with this.
Mm.
And 2026, 4 years later, and we're doing the things. We're doing
And
the
this
stuff.
year, this school year, you stepped back from doing as much supply teaching as you'd been doing in the past in order to try to more fully launch art as a full-time gig.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of try to do about 4 days a week, 3 days a week of supply teaching. Kind of depends on projects. The previous years have been like 4 to 5 days a week. So every year I'm like, can I cut half a day or can I cut a day, depending obviously on paying those bills.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Affordability is rough out there, but yeah, this all of the writing grants and going to workshops and putting out like exhibition proposals have all been like everyone said yes in 2026, and now we have the next 9 months of like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah, you've been busy.
Stupid busy. Stupid busy. I I don't know how I'll do it all if I'm being honest, but we'll get there. We'll figure it out. Probably a lot of late nights.
Hmm.
Yeah. March break is going to be
Madness.
yeah, madness. 12-hour days in the studio
Mm.
nonstop. So,
Cool.
that's me. How about you?
Well, I'm a high school teacher. I teach right now. I'm full-time science with a little bit of French still sprinkled in. Um, and I was trying to think of like when did I actually start painting? I think I took an art course from with the Peterborough Art Gallery because that's where I did my B.Ed and started teaching. And it was like a 6 week, once a week, just show up and all the materials are included. And it was a bit of a hodgepodge. The instructor was an artist. I don't think he'd ever taught any kind of workshops or anything before, so he was making it up as he went along. Um, but I think the fact that everything was included in the workshops meant that there was no attachment to like I have to make something good because I spent all this money on these supplies. So it allowed me a certain amount of creative freedom, I guess. And from there, I then took a couple more courses through. There's this Peterborough Art School or Peterborough School of Arts that were just to kind of remind me how to or practice some drawing skills and so on. And from there, I kind of started painting a little bit on my own. So I don't self-taught. I don't think anyone's ever self-taught, but I certainly don't have any formal academic training, and I've been just kind of playing around. I consider myself as much an art cheerleader as an artist. But in the last couple of years, I've been submitting to mostly group shows. Um, I've actually haven't done any submissions in the new this new year yet because I'm a little swamped at work. Um, but yeah, just trying to kind of get out there and see what's there. I don't really see myself ever like art will always be a part-time thing on the side. I'm not necessarily trying to monetize it because I have a full-time job. I have the freedom of being able to just have fun
Mm-hmm.
and maybe in retirement, which is still a little ways down the road, um, flipping into maybe more of a not commercial, but like maybe focusing more on sales and but for now just kind of having fun and submitting to shows when I can and trying to make a body of work, but not too stressed about
Mm-hmm.
whether or not I'm able to hang shows on the regular. So
Which gives us both a really fun way or fun perspective of looking at art because we aren't like well, I'm a bit more dependent on it for income. It's not the only thing for income. So unlike maybe more practicing artists that we'll hopefully get to talk to in this podcast, we we can come at it from like a less of a personal perspective. I think that will be a really interesting point of our podcast is just like the challenges, the struggles, how hard it is to make this work, and how other artists do make it work.
yeah, I think I have to imagine that for our own practices, it's sort of nice to not have everything hanging in the balance in terms of sales, right? Like, um, I think a lot of artists make sacrifices, not everyone, but a lot of artists either have a part-time job or a full-time job, and the ones who don't have to decide how to strike the balance between making work that's more commercial that they maybe don't love or that they used to love, but it's not really where they want to focus all of their creative energy, but that's what brings in the money, so they keep making it. And I think those are complicated decisions to have to make that we don't have to make.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because when I first started this journey, I had very much accidentally landed in the okay, what do I think people want to buy?
Mm.
What do I think will sell? And like at one point, like I was doing flowers, and like, well, flowers are lovely. That's not my true passion to paint,
Mm-hmm.
and I very much thought like I had to paint pretty things.
Mm.
Um, and I found that that was the most unenjoyable artwork to paint.
And I think that shows up in the finished pieces too, right? Like if you're not loving what you're doing, then it's not as lovely of a piece of work in the end.
Hmm.
which in the end also has an impact on marketability.
Hmm.
Like people can sense it even if you're not saying it.
I think that's very much for the reason why my family now owns those art pieces and not not a random person who saw that in the farmer's market or the shop that it was at, because you're right. I don't think it had the same love and intention that
Mm,
like my abstract work has now. Yeah.
mm. So what kind of stuff are you painting now then?
Color.
What inspires you?
Color. So I'm a huge nerd for Impressionism. I think it's really interesting how that time period in history was the invention of the camera, was the invention of like more affordable paint. So more people were painting and more people were painting for the joy of painting and not because they were trying to capture the world around them. Like they had a lot more freedom. So I love Impressionism because of their use of color, because it was more in the moment.
There's also more, it was the moment when new colors were becoming available, right? Like
Hmm.
there were colors in ranges that had never been available before. We're moving beyond earth-based pigments into more sort of chemically processed industrial production. So just ranges of hues and saturations that have just never been on the palette before.
Yes. And that is so shown in those paintings of that time period. So I absolutely love that time period and that period of painting, and I do that in my work in the sense that I think about I think about materials and color, not just color. So how does a watercolor blue versus an acrylic blue versus a pencil crayon blue versus a acrylic or like acrylic marker blue or oil blue work to create that same language and that same understanding than just like one particular like oil painting, for instance. So Monet would have just used oil paints. He would have tried to capture all of that light and that movement in that scene in color with just one particular material. But I've added the equation of like, but what if all of those materials could have that language? And then we combine it. And what does that look like? And how do we express ourselves? So I'm obsessed with color. I think I'm always trying to capture that, but I'm not trying to capture it in a realistic form. I'm trying to capture it in an abstract form. And I also think about memory and I think about our legacy and then technology in the sense of like we have these phones. We're always taking pictures of things, whether it's to remember that note or to remember that where we parked or to remember that moment that we're in at this very moment. But all those pictures are just pixels. They're just these tiny little squares that form an image. So my work has a lot of cubes. My husband calls me the cube lady. He kind of like in a lovingly way makes fun of me for just like literally like, he's like, what can I do today with my cubes? How can I rearrange those cubes again in a different format with different colors? And that is how I think. Like I've started to see the world around us in just like these like little pixelated dots. How can I layer them? In what materials can I layer them?
Mm.
And then if I were to destroy them, whether that's with water or erasing or fire, what happens? So there's like that relationship between materials as well.
Is there a reason why you went with cubes instead of just squares? Because obviously pixels are two-dimensional squares, but you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about like Necker style cubes. What's why cubes instead of just squares? Which obviously the cubes are still two-dimensional, but
Mm-hmm.
foreshortened squares.
I it's every time I get asked that question, I always get all frozen about it because I'm like, I don't know why the cubes. Like I it it was a shape that just came really easily. It was like something that I could repeat. Like I wanted it to be more than just a square. Like I wanted it to have a little bit of complexity. I wanted it to be able to like move it and shift it and see what it looked like when you have it overlapping. And I wanted that kind of 3D like illusion. I wanted to be able to play with that 3D like that 3D illusion. And I think that's why it's the cube. I don't know. It's something I can't answer properly.
You shared an Instagram post, I think it was like in the last week or two, I guess. Um, that I think it was a picture from one of your journals in one of your studio sort of in progress posts, and it had like notes about colors, and it made me realize that, or I'm asking you because I'm not sure if I'm understood correctly, like each color, does that represent a memory? And if each color represents a memory, how do you decide on the color of the memory?
Ooh, great question. Some do and some don't. So there's there's a couple of paintings that I'm working on, or a couple of projects that I'm working on, and one of those projects is just uh, like I'm reteaching myself color theory using a variety of different materials, and oftentimes I will document like so for instance I'm doing a gradation of like reds to oranges to yellows, so like I will document those colors and I'll write down like well like what that transition will look like and then I'll number them so that way like I create swatches in my sketchbook of all the yellows, reds, oranges that I have and then I'll number them in the order that I want to put them in the final painting. So that wouldn't have anything to do with memory. But the other project I'm working on is my first really kind of conceptual solo show, and that is me combining my cube paintings with physical photographs, physical memories. Um, and that's been a challenge because at first I started taking the colors from the photograph and trying to interpret them into the cubes. And there was like a disconnect. There was like a bit, I was a bit stuck. I was like, this isn't, sometimes it worked really well. And other times I was like, it's not conveying the memory properly. Um, and I think to pick a color to talk about a memory, it's like talking, you have to pick a color that matches the feeling. And then the feeling you can then start tailoring to the physical object. So, for instance, like, and that's gonna be different for everyone, but there's an image that I have with me in a snowsuit and a shovel burying one of my family members in the snow. And the snow in that image is very yellow. Like the lighting is very yellow. So it's not this pure white and it's not as cold as that memory feels to me. Like that memory is very like there is no warmth at all. It's very devoid of that that
Like
pleasantness.
physically, but or emotionally?
Both. Both. So I had to it was this like weird contrast between like I wanted the blues and the purples and the whites of the cubes that I was integrating with that to be a lot colder, to feel a lot more numbing, but I didn't so like I you had to then use color theory to try to like contrast the yellow within that image to kind of play. I think I was successful. If I were to do it again, I think I'd be even more successful. It's that like constant, like
Iterative practice.
you always find your own mistakes, right? Like as artists, we're the harshest critics. We're gonna be like, I could do it better. Eventually you just have to let go. But I think that's where like color and memory really fit together. But it's not every painting that I do where I have a color that goes with a memory.
Hmm, cool.
So tell me about your work. What are you doing these days?
So right now, and again, I haven't had a lot of time to work on it much lately. Like I'm lucky if I get one afternoon or evening in the studio a week. But I'm thinking a lot about and working towards building a body of work around backyard bugs, um, which is much less intellectual, I think, than what you're doing. But I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
I really like nature. So, and I think the thing about bugs that I'm enjoying, I mean, it's connected to the last series that I worked on was nudibranchs, which are sea slugs, super colorful underwater, soft-bodied animals. Um, and I still have like unfinished pieces from that series that I need to keep working on, but I've also, I think, emotionally transitioned away. Like I'm over it.
Mhm.
But backyard bugs I like because I think they're underappreciated. They're sort of like, you know, our ecosystems hang on them. Without bugs, and not just backyard. I'm focusing on backyard bugs, but bugs generally, our ecosystems would, you know, collapse without them. Insects, I think, by mass, are the most um, like biggest animal group on the planet, and most people don't realize just how many of them there are. There's an element of disgust that we have associated with them that I kind of enjoy too, because actually, if you look closely at them, they're really beautiful. They're really like intricate and sort of architectural because they've got these exoskeletons, so I think they're interesting to like draw, because there's just so much detail, and they can be super colorful, and I want people to appreciate them for just how valuable they are to us, and they're everywhere. Like this is something that you can just step out into your own yard and, you know, spend a couple of minutes poking around in the grass or the flowers, or go to your local park and look at the bark on a tree and just appreciate it. I think we spend a lot of time and energy uh, trying to find superlative experiences that are, you know, that require us to go outside of our town, province, country. And I'm just as guilty as the next person of having done that. But I don't think that's necessary. I think that you can have like superlative, these like fantastical, wonderful, awesome experiences by just like looking around in your own backyard and appreciating the things that we ignore. In the same way as like Pete and I, my partner, often we've got kayaks that we keep at the Guelph Boat Club because we don't have storage in our apartment. And so it started out as a storage solution, but it means that we actually paddle at Guelph Lake really regularly.
Mhm.
And so we get to see Guelph Lake throughout the seasons as it progresses, which is really neat. Like, and as much as we love going and paddling in the Northern Ontario lakes and river systems, it's also just really lovely to be in one spot and get to know, you know, the little arms up in the north end of the lake, and know where you're going to find different birds, or just see how the water levels shift and how the life changes over the course of you know, winter, spring,
Mhm.
summer, fall.
Mhm.
um, I think that, you know, we don't need to go to Northern Ontario to have these like fantastical outdoor experiences. We can just sort of narrow our focus and really appreciate what we have locally. And so that's sort of what I'm thinking with the bugs as well, and really trying to just appreciate what's in front of me. It also means that I don't have to go very far afield to find subject matter. Um, so yeah.
I also love the alliteration, backyard bugs. And backyard makes it sound like it's so friendly.
Hmm.
Like you're right. There is a slight disgust element to bugs. I will admit, every time I see a spider in my backyard, I'm like, "Ah, run away." Because I'm not a fan of spiders, but I love sitting in my backyard and being and just like watching the movement that happens there. There's so much life if you just pay attention to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I found a stick bug
Cool.
on our, ooh, what are they called? Echinacea.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably the coolest thing I saw that day. Had to
Nice.
take a picture of it, had to send it to all my friends and my husband. I was like, look at this bug in my bush. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's great. A great little project. Or not great little project, it's a great big project with lots of little friends.
Yeah, and I've had ideas of like, oh, I could, you know, I could assign myself a residency at the Guelph Arboretum and just go there once a week during the summer and try to make a different,
Hmm.
painting or sketch. Or I'm really enjoying lino prints and trying to figure out how I can translate bugs into a lino print, which is like there's obviously a lot more limitations that way, but I think that it translates an element of the architectural nature of some of these a lot of these insects. Um so yeah, I'm sort of toying with that actually. Like, do I this summer I've got 8 weeks, do I just sort of assign myself one lino print a week based on bugs that I can encounter at the arboretum? Or I mean, I don't even have to go to the arboretum, it could just be my own front yard.
Hmm.
But
Which is a great point of like, as artists who have other responsibilities and jobs, how do we create a timetable for ourselves and
mm,
stick to it? Like, I can imagine that being challenging for a full-time artist, let alone someone who has other responsibilities quite regularly that limits them from kind of exploring that. So how do you keep a practice despite how busy you are and despite how many responsibilities you have?
yes. uh I try to I really do try to protect my Saturdays. And we have friends, we have a social life, so we often do go out on Saturday evenings. But usually we know ahead of time that we're going to go out on Saturday evening. So then I try to make sure that I get some time Saturday afternoon. Um, that doesn't always happen, but lately, like in the last year or so, I've been pretty good about like being selfish about some part of my Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also important just for me because like mentally, it's sometimes the only time that I get to be fully alone. Even if Pete's around, um, like we don't talk well because we share a studio. He's got his music stuff and I've got my art stuff in the same space, but while we're working, we generally don't talk very much.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to have that time to be alone, especially as someone who, like, before Pete moved in, I lived on my own for more than 10 years. So now I go to work and I come home and, I work in a building with over 1,500 people. Uh, and then, yeah, I come home and there's only one other person, but it's still not just me. So, yeah, I'm fairly protective, I think, of like some part of my Saturday. Sundays are generally, um, I like to say that I protect my Sundays for schoolwork, but really I'm just procrastinating the schoolwork. And then, but at some point on Sunday, I have to actually work. So there's one day a week. And then in the summertime, I actually like last summer was a bit crazy. I overprogrammed myself and we traveled a lot and I was only home for maybe half the summer, all told, which wasn't enough time to really have a regular art practice, but I did try to make sure that when I was home, I was spending a few hours in the studio most days. Um, for March break this year, I've told you this before, Pete and I are doing for the second time. We did it not last year, but the year before. We've rented an Airbnb in a little town, and he's going to bring his music stuff. I'm going to bring my art stuff, and we are just going to have an art retreat for a week, which is we're both really looking forward to it. And we know that we could do this at our apartment, but we would just get caught up in all of the other little daily tasks if we did that. So we're going to go away. We will eat takeout and frozen foods for the better part of the week and go for walks on the beach in the evening and just have a week dedicated to sort of reestablishing, I think, a bit of an art practice. I think for me that'll be really useful in like it'll give me a solid block of time to think about these bugs and how do I want to approach them. Am I going to keep going with experimenting with lino? Do I want to do more painting? um, I'm not really sure what the answers are yet. So that solid week will be a chance to kind of explore that, and hopefully I'll come home with answers and a direction for my Saturdays going forward.
Fun. I like that.
Do you have any um like how do you put force yourself to get that studio time, especially with a dog and the job that is actually super variable. Like it's very easy, I imagine, to wake up in the morning and decide to go to work instead of going to the studio.
hmm It's been a learning process. So I've been supply teaching for, I guess, 4 years, but my first year I was like supply teaching and then doing a part-time job with the Arts Council. And I found like it is learning yourself. It is knowing your limitations. And like I am a person who can say yes to too many things and then overbook myself and then never have time. So that was what happened in 2022 is like I couldn't do supply teaching and the Guelph Arts Council and my own art practice. Like it was just impossible. The art practice didn't happen.
Of course, it's heavy art practice is the thing that's easiest to
Yeah.
let go.
So when I left the Guelph Arts Council just to do supply teaching and my art practice, it became a little bit easier. Um, because the joys of supply teaching is I don't have to do PEA days. I don't have to do those. So those immediately became dedicated studio days. And that's kind of how it started is like I felt like I had to work a lot. Occasionally it's like there's lulls, so September is a bit slow for jobs. January is a bit slow for jobs. June is a bit slow for jobs. So you kind of take those moments, and it's easier said than done. But you take those moments when there is less work to be like, okay, I can't go supply. Use your time in the studio. Like you force yourself. Um, and that's when like that's kind of how it started. And then I've got as I've booked things and planned projects, I'm like, okay, I can give myself like I can tell Donna or whoever I'm working with, like, nope, I'm not gonna work this Friday or this Thursday or what does the week look like for the school? Because
Mm,
I kind of spend only most of my time at two schools. So
right.
I have a bit of flexibility of saying, what does the school schedule look like? When do you think you need me the most? Okay, I'm going to take this day off.
Mm.
And that's why supply teaching has been wonderful because it's been really flexible. I can hopefully work as much as I want or need, or I can say no to jobs.
Is your ultimate goal to not supply teach at all? To have a full-time studio practice, or do you still want to be sort of in between two worlds?
I think for the time being, I want to be in between two worlds. I think a really beautiful balance would be like supply teach 2 to 3 times a week and then be in the studio the rest of the time because there needs to be a series about teaching. Like I have to at some point express that and my experience with that because
Mm.
I got a lot to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We'll save that for another episode.
yeah, I have lots to say, but teaching or supply teaching is nice because I didn't leave teaching because I didn't like teaching. I left teaching because I didn't like the bureaucracy of it. I didn't like you're asked to do a lot in a short period of time and you give way more than you ever get back. But like being a supply teacher at like those two schools, like I still get to create relationships with kids. I still get to be that person for some of those kids that they need, and I want to be that person. I enjoy having those really intellectual conversations with kids who just want to have that. I just don't love behavior management every single
I hear you.
day.
Are we ready to wrap up? I think we've done an episode.
I think we did an episode.
Should we tell the people what's coming next?
Yeah. Okay.
We've got for the next episode, we are looking at speaking with the Guelph Arts Council team.
Yes, Maddie and Preetam. Preetam, the acting director of the Guelph Arts Council, and Maddie, who does the programming and social media.
Mm-hmm. And then beyond that, uh, we're looking at some artist interviews, I guess.
None that have been confirmed at all yet
Yeah,
whatsoever, but we have lots of ideas and hopefully talk to lots of people.
awesome. So when this goes out into the world, we're hoping that we'll get some engagement. And one thing that you, the people, if you would like to help us out, uh, share this podcast with your friends, your inspires, your art cheerleaders. Um, and if there are artists or arts related workers that you think we should talk to, let us know.
Yes, we are very interested in learning about how this world works because at the end of the day, this is a very nuanced world. There is not a single path. There are hundreds. It's all individual. And we're here to support everyone. Give them an idea. How do you do this? How can you make this work?
Awesome. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here, Catherine.
Thank you for being here, Natalie.
We just made a podcast. High five.
We did it.